England are in another semi-final, Gareth Southgate's third in 4 tournaments. And once again, we stepped back from the brink of elimination after Mbolo's 75th minute goal, with Saka finding that moment of individual brilliance 5 minutes later, and we toiled through extra time. And they delivered probably the best set of England penalties that have ever been taken. Was it the perfect performance? No. Are all of our problems fixed? No. But for once, there are actually some positives to take from this display, and that's what I'm going to try and focus on here. Our issues at this tournament so far have been well documented, by myself included, and it's left us with a bit of a feeling after each round that we're riding our luck and that we're going to get sussed out sooner or later. And there was luck here once again, and of course some of these problems are still hiding beneath the surface. But the important thing is this was a much more balanced performance, a balanced setup from this England side. And we have a performance here that we can build on into the semi-finals. Gareth Southgate has now found a system that works, and it's one I imagine that he will stick with, this 3-5-2 shape. All week it had been reported that Southgate was preparing to switch to that back three, and that's exactly what we saw. But the wing-backs were in fact on opposite sides. Obviously there was a lot of talk about Saka being retained in that left wing-back role we saw at the end of the Slovakia match, but he actually stayed on his more natural right side, allowing him to continue attacking down the right wing. And thank God, because he carried us through this match at times. To some extent, the 3-5-2 on paper wasn't dissimilar to the shape that we had been playing before, with Kyle Walker pushing out onto that right wing when Saka was pushing up. But there was some adjustment in the midfield setup, and I think this really made a difference, particularly in the first half, with Mainu, Rice, Bellingham and Foden now playing in more of a traditional box with the 2 10s in front of the 2 defensive mids. And I thought this honestly just felt a lot more natural. Foden looked a lot more comfortable rather than having to be out on the wing and cut in. And I think it also improved our 2 defensive mids having 2 attacking midfielders in front of them. Kobbie Mainoo I thought was excellent in the first half. He was everywhere around that pitch. His passing range was great. He was breaking up play. And most importantly, he kept Granit Xhaka pretty quiet. And I said before the match that this was going to be the key to stopping this Switzerland side. And I think that's partially why this new 3-5-2 setup worked so well. We actually matched them man for man, and did manage to keep them fairly quiet for long periods of the match. The only thing this change in shape didn't really change is our attacking build-up, because we still did not have a shot on target until Saka found that leveller in the 80th minute. It continues to be an issue. But the important thing here is the adjustments actually did allow Saka to be more dangerous than he has been in the entire tournament so far, because he got more space out on that wing and he looked dangerous. He was taking on his man every time. He was getting more joy of cutting into the box, with that early potential chance for Kobbie Mainoo, which he put past the bar, with that early cut back to Mainoo inside the box, which was deflected out for a corner. And Switzerland honestly did not know how to deal with him. He was a constant threat. Now, we were still lacking down that left-hand side. We know that Trippier cannot offer that overlap in the same way that Saka does, but it felt like less of a problem than previous games. It felt more balanced. It didn't feel like an obvious weakness. And so going into half-time, despite the fact that we still managed to create very little, I felt more comfortable with this performance. It felt like we were in control of the match. That did start to fade after half time, and I think that was largely in part because our press was much improved in this match, and I think the players were starting to get knackered around the 60th minute. It was very obvious that we started to need some changes, with Switzerland starting to press us more and starting to create more chances. And the longer he waited to make those changes, it felt like Gareth Southgate was potentially trying to see this game out to penalties, which is a bizarre approach and a bizarre thing to say, but it's the only explanation for waiting so long to make those changes. And admittedly, for all the positives that I've said, I did think that he had left it too late when Switzerland finally found that opening goal. Tired legs had turned into tired heads, and we just switched off for that one moment with the ball cut into the box and Dwight whistling that dangerous ball across the face of goal. Stones just couldn't get to it, and then Bolo tucked it in at the back post. And at this point, Southgate couldn't get his substitutions on any sooner. It was a triple change with Palmer, Eze and Shaw coming on for Concert, Trippier and Mainoo. But before any of them could try and impact the game, Saka had taken things into his own hands, cutting in on the 80th minute from the edge of the box and unleashing that powerful ball into the bottom left post and in. What a satisfying sound that made. And what a goal, what a moment from Saka to produce. He has been good in this tournament. I felt sorry for him at times. He has continually been our only outlet. But we saw a moment of anger for once. Someone took a shot. It's something I don't think players in the Euros have done enough, not just England, but in general. It's just shoot at goal, and it actually worked. And as the next 10 minutes played out, it became increasingly obvious that we were heading into extra time. And it gave those three introduced players time to start impacting the game. Palmer again was full of creativity. Not quite as effective as we've seen in previous sub appearances. I think he was trying a few things in and around the box, but just wasn't quite on the same wavelength as those players. But again, we did look more positive with him on the pitch, and he does create more than Foden does. And I said that I would focus on positives in this video, and Luke Shaw was a big positive. I must admit, I had completely given up hope that he would get any minutes at this tournament. And for someone that hasn't played football since February, he looked very comfortable on the pitch. A huge positive that he got over 45 minutes under his belt and could well be in contention for the semi-finals. Extra time was of course very nervy, but despite the chances that came for both sides, it felt very obvious that this one was heading to penalties. Declan Rice had that brilliant shot saved by Summer at the left corner. What a way that would have been to win it. It honestly feels like Rice is overdue a goal at this point. But like I say, when that one didn't go in, I knew that it was going to penalties. Shaqiri himself nearly put it in twice up the other end. One from a corner with that bouncing off the woodwork, and another forcing a great save from Pickford on the right hand side of goal. But he kept it level, and Southgate's mind started to turn towards penalties, because just like we saw in that Euro 2020 final, he made two final changes to prepare for the shootout. The first was Ivan Toney coming on for captain Harry Kane, who was muscled off of the pitch by Akanji and into a water box on the edge of the pitch. And given Harry Kane's penalty record, that felt like a huge call to make, but we know why Ivan Toney was in this squad. But maybe more surprising was Trent coming on to replace Phil Foden. That made it clear that Southgate knew exactly who he wanted his penalty takers to be before this match. And that made a lot of sense when we saw the shootout play out, because as I said, this was probably the greatest set of England penalties that there's ever been. Before we talk about the penalty takers though, Jordan Pickford. We knew what he was up to with that long delay before Switzerland's first penalty. He tried to ice Akanji out, and boy did it work. That long delay piled on the nerves, and I've got to be honest, I was completely sure that Pickford was going to save this one. It was a poor penalty from Akanji, but Pickford knew where he was going to dive. He had all of the directions on his water bottle once again, and he set us up for success with that excellent save from the first penalty. Our own penalty takers still had to produce the goods though, but what a statement it was from both manager and player for Cole Palmer to take the first penalty. This is a player who in the grand scheme of things has had fleeting minutes, and he stood up and took that penalty like an absolute champion. He just coldly slotted it into the bottom left and walked off and went about the rest of his day. Switzerland of course would score the rest of their penalties from here on out, but so did England. Bellingham showed nerves of steel after that stuttered run up to coolly slot it into the bottom right corner. But the best of the lot, of course, Bukayo Saka finally ridding himself of some demons and putting that ball into the bottom right corner. He made us wait for it. I think it was around 9 seconds after the ref had whistled that he actually took the shot, but I think that's understandable, right? His face was a picture of joy, and I cannot imagine what the relief of that penalty going in must have felt like for him. Tony followed it up with arguably the cockiest penalty of the entire shootout, not looking at the ball once and giving the keeper the eyes the entire time. That's what he's there for, that perfect penalty record, and he delivered. And then of course Trent was there to take the final penalty. He was the final substitution of the match. We have seen this before in the Euro 2020 final with Gareth Southgate bringing on two players right at the end of extra time to take a penalty without touching the ball. He did learn from his mistake this time though, bringing him into the game a little bit earlier, allowing him to get up to pace, and it paid off with a very good penalty to win the match. And again, talking of positives, this shootout was one of them. This was a different generation to what we have seen before taking penalties. They looked unaffected by the nerves of the occasion. And for all the critique that we've seen of this team, it showed another level hiding beneath the surface, another gear that they can find. And just like that, we find ourselves in yet another semi-final, and we know we'll be facing the Netherlands now. And suddenly a mood of boredom and confusion around this England side is probably turning into a could they? Because for as poor as we have been throughout this whole tournament, it does slightly feel like things are starting to click into place a little bit. We're still lacking in that creativity. We didn't have a shot on target until Saka's leveller in the 80th minute. But then France are in the semi-finals without having scored a goal from open play. Southgate has told us time and time again that this is tournament football. And maybe this is. Can we go all the way? I don't know, but it does feel like in the process of this quarter-final win, we have resolved some of the problems. The setup is now there. The midfield is more balanced. Luke Shaw could potentially be coming in for his first start to resolve that problem on the left. And we know now, after multiple samples, that this is an England team that can play badly and get through. Can that take us all the way to a final? Can we win the tournament playing like that? It is bizarrely a possibility. Some say that we have been given a generous run once again and that we'll be found out against the better sides, but you can only play who is in front of you. And Switzerland were one of the form sides of this tournament. We were scared of them going into this match, with many touting England as the underdog. It doesn't matter how we did it, we passed the test once again, and we have every chance of doing so against the Netherlands on Wednesday night. Anyway, that is enough of my rambling. Let me know what you thought about the match in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you so much once again for watching. If you've enjoyed this post-match reaction and you want to see more from me, please do hit like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.